Welcome to another episode of Tufftalk. Today, doing something different again. You know, Big Snoop always bring you something different, somebody different, you never know. But today, I'm going to say it again, my mentor. I told y'all every time I brought somebody on here, this is about the third person that I said my mentor. Because I just want y'all to understand the fact, in my life, I had to become humble enough to take direction. So, when this man came into my life, it was at that point that I was ready to change and evolve into something great. I don't know if you knew when I walked in the room that greatness was walking in, but it walked in. We became friends. Mm-hmm. And after that, because I met him while I was in prison, and he have a program, and he's going to tell you all about it. So I'm going to let my friend Steve tell you who he is, and we're going to have a conversation.
Oh, by the way, I could tell there was something special.
Ah, thanks, Steve.
You project.
Thank you, man.
So anyway, yeah, who am I? That's an interesting one. When I was 42 years old, I was released from prison for the last time. And I'd been there a few times. And that sentence was 21 years. I went 3 weeks from there to law school. The reason I did that was because I'd been in and out of prison since I was a kid. And the last time I was sitting there and I went, I got to do something different.
Hold up. We can't give it to him that fast.
Okay.
You just said that you came home from prison and went to law school. He said law school. Y'all heard him right.
Yep. So there I was in prison, and I got paroled. Surprise. A little earlier than I thought this time. And I was excited as could be. And I thought, great, this is great. And then I thought, shit, I'm broke. I got no friends. Family doesn't like me. What am I going to do when I get out and I'm not coming back to prison? So I spent a tremendous amount of time talking to everybody on the tier. Like, what should I do? I read a couple of books. I looked at things. Nothing was of any use to me. And then I started running through a checklist. Well, I'm going to be old. I'm going to be 42. So I can't do manual labor. I have to do something I can do for a long time because I'm broke. So it has to be intellectual. You know, who lives a long time? Doctors and lawyers and stuff like that. And then I'm like, well, I don't know if I can do much of that. I got a felony conviction or 3 or 4 or 5. Mm. You know how it goes. They come in groups.
I definitely know how that goes.
And I was just talking around to people. And it turns out that while I was in prison that bit, I did a little bit of legal work for a couple of guys, one guy in particular, just because I had time. Not that I was particularly interested in legal work. And I was teaching GED, and the guy couldn't do math. Addition and subtraction, we spent hours on it, day after day. Couldn't do multiplication. The end of the day, he could do it, sort of. The next day, he couldn't. So after a couple of weeks, I'm like, first I'm thinking he's pulling my leg, but he's not. So I'm like, what the fuck are you in here for? Well, he had a life sentence. He's a cocaine kingpin.
Cocaine kingpin that can't do math.
Yeah. A little light went off in my head and said, no, he isn't. So I asked him for his paperwork. I'm like, he's too dumb to do that. Anybody who deals drugs can add and subtract, multiply and divide, figure out if they're making some money. I know, I did it. So we looked at his paperwork, and basically he got set up by the FBI. They spent a couple months wiring him and everything else, and say, well, you know, can you get, he worked in a junkyard. Can you get me some coke? He's like, well, yeah, I guess I can get you some coke. How much you want? So it was a tiny amount, you know, a gram or something like that. Yeah, I can get you that. Okay, well, can you get me more? He's like, well, I don't know. And they kept pushing him. They pushed him for months until finally they got him to say that he could get him like 3 or 4 kilos. This is interesting because this guy had no idea what a kilo was. I know because I tried to teach him. And then they busted him. And he had a public defender in some rural place in middle America. And I read his paperwork, and they said he owned all these cars. He was so rich, you know. He had
all this was fabricated?
Yeah. Well, no, he owned the cars. It was a junkyard. Cars were worth like $50. Oh, you know, he had this many Cadillacs and this and this and this and this. It was all bullshit. And they gave him a life sentence. I'm like, there's got to be a way around this. So I just started reading the legal books. Started doing some research, talking to some of the jailhouse lawyers. And I started writing, you know, try to copy briefs and filings. And we did. And we've copied and filed and copied and read stuff. And it took a while, but he eventually got out. There's no way he was a kingpin. Wow. No way. His wife was a janitor, third shift at a hospital somewhere. No, this is not a big drug deal.
How much time did they actually do before he got out?
Oh, God, it had to be about 10, 12 years. Wow. So I'm talking to people about getting out, and there were 2 lawyers on my tier from Chicago. They were in on, there was an investigation called Grey Lord back in the 70s, early 80s. And it was for bribery. Actually, one was a judge. I'm like, what are you doing in a maximum security federal prison? You guys are like white collar, whatever. Because they only had like 3-year sentences at a camp. Yeah. They walked away. They left. They broke out of jail.
Oh, they broke out of jail. They walked away from the camp.
A judge and a lawyer from Chicago walked away from the camp, and they got caught. So they got 5 more years, and they got put to a much higher security prison. So they would quit breaking away. So that's where I met him. Anyway, these guys on my tier said, you know what? You should be a lawyer. And I said, you can't be a lawyer with a criminal record like mine. With any criminal record. Everybody knows that. You can't do this. It's bullshit. And they're like, no, you can. Really. Everybody's wrong. You can do it. I'm like, nah, you're wrong. We went back and forth at this for a long time. And they both said, when we get out of here, we're going to be practicing law again. They are. Anyway, they said, well, just take the law school aptitude test, the entrance exam. So I'm like, okay, fine, I'll take the test. You know, I'll tank it. It'll be terrible, whatever. It's almost impossible to take the LSAT in federal prison. I'm probably one of the only people who ever did it.
What's that?
Law school application test or admission test.
Okay. I wanted to get that out there because we're about to go to a commercial break, and then we're going to bring it back. Pick up where we left off. Welcome back to Tuff Talk, Big Snoop with my man Steve Gotzler. Steve, before we went to the break, we was talking about the LSAT. I would like you to talk a little bit more about that because, you know, this show is to inspire, you know, ex-offenders to light the flame up under some of the families to support some ex-offenders or their family that's in prison, to let them know, hear this information from this show and let them know what's possible. Because a lot of us suffer from hopelessness. Society suffers from hopelessness. So just giving something like that, this information, is like putting hope into the youth, to people that think they can't do nothing, just to see your story that you did it after prison. After a couple prison stints, you said. You did it. You know, so explain a little bit more about that.
Okay, so I understand what you're talking about hopelessness. An awful lot of people, myself included, believe that once you have a serious criminal record, that you can't do much, that all kind of jobs are closed to you. Now, it's not going to be easy, But very few jobs are actually closed to you with a felony conviction. You actually have to look up and see what stuff is legally forbidden to you. So when guys were talking to me about you should be a lawyer, and I said, no, that's bull, you can't be a lawyer. They said, well, let's look it up. So we started checking it out, and it turns out that being a lawyer, like being almost anything in the United States, is state-by-state laws. And every state has different laws. And it turned out, at the time, I'm not sure what it is now, that there were 17 states where it was illegal to be a lawyer with a felony conviction. But that meant that there were 33 where it wasn't. Mm-hmm. So I went, maybe I can be a lawyer. What the heck? So I signed up to take the LSAT, Law School Admission Test. Interesting thing about that test is it's a difficult and strange test, but they administer it at the same time nationwide a couple times a year. I was in prison, so I had to convince the federal prison to allow me to have somebody from the LSAT organization come in and do the test at exactly the same time, the same way as everybody else in the country. Wow. That took a lot of work because they didn't want to do it. Took a good year. And an awful lot of prison staff don't want to see you do well in life.
Facts.
Yeah, facts. And so I had like some sabotage going on, et cetera, et cetera. But ultimately, I got to take the LSAT in federal prison. I did it in the correctional officer's cafeteria. Mm-hmm. So during the exam, I have a proctor from the organization, LSAT, administering the test. And every couple of minutes, a guard coming over and interrupting, which is against all the rules. You know, that's what he's there to stop. So when the whole thing was over, he said, this is terrible. You had so many interruptions. We're going to let you take it again for free next time we offer it. And I said, that test was a pain in the ass. Whatever score I get is the score I got. Period. So I did the test.
You aced it?
I did very well.
Okay.
I did very, very well.
Due to the circumstances.
Yeah, you know, almost everybody takes a class preparing for it. And obviously I couldn't do that. So then you have to apply to law school. So I had my whole tier working on what law schools I should apply to. And it's pretty funny because like we had guys, all these catalogs coming from all the law schools to the prison. And guys looking through them like, you got to go here. Look at the woman in this one, you know. I'm like, you know, she's probably like 85 by now. That picture looks pretty old. But anyway, so yeah, we applied. The whole group applied with me to almost all the law schools on the first page of the U.S. News and World Report law school rankings. And we sent the whole thing off. The application package is like that thick. Many questions. And one of them, of course, is, you know, have you ever been arrested?
Felony?
Do you have a felony? If you do, please explain. So there's a big, long essay, etc. I had a lot of guys on my tier help me with my essay. I had this one counterfeiter guy who goes, no, you got to make sure they're crying by the end. Mm-hmm. So we rewrote it, and I still got that thing. When I read it, I'm like, this kid, he had it rough.
Wasn't me.
Anyway, so yeah, I applied. I got the funniest rejection letters you ever saw in your life. You're where? You know, we don't run classes in prison, et cetera, et cetera. But I got accepted to about 20 law schools out of the top, I think, 50 or so. I don't remember how many.
So you had to wait till you come home to enter the law school, though, right?
Right, but you got to get the application done.
Okay.
You got to get admitted. You got to do all this stuff. Then it comes down to timing. So eventually, I picked a law school. I picked Rutgers in Newark, New Jersey, because there was a really cool professor who taught there, and because it was the only law school that kind of recruited me. They like wrote back and did this and this and called the prison and did an interview and all that kind of stuff, which they don't do these days. And I thought, well, anybody who wants me, I guess I'll go there. So I went to Rutgers. And law school was a trip. I can talk hours about that. But ultimately, I graduated. And then you have to take the bar exam. Bar exam's a pain in the butt. And then you wait about 5 months, and you find out if you passed. Well, that's how it goes for everybody except people with felony convictions. After you pass the bar exam, then there's a thing called character and fitness hearings. For 99% of people who pass the bar, they just fill out about a 100-page form and send it in and get stamped okay. But once again, there's the big question. Do you have any criminal record? And of course, I do. So they call you in. They deny you. You've got to appeal. You appeal, they deny you there. That takes months. Then you have to appeal again. Usually you end up going to the state Supreme Court or something close, but it's different every state. And eventually I get admitted. So the way it generally works is every time you move from one state to another and you want to practice law, you have to take that state's bar exam and go through this whole process again. So anytime I move from one state to another, I hire a specialist, a lawyer who only does people with ethics issues for the Character and Fitness Committee. If you do that first, it's much smoother.
Wow, that's a deep story, man. You know, I congratulate you on that, Steve.
Thanks.
You know, that's something that the people need to hear. You know, I know, and the way you was giving it to us, man. You know, I let him give it to us raw and uncut, because I know y'all don't believe him. So just listen to him. He's telling you the truth. You can become a lawyer.
Just look me up online.
Just look it up online.
I'm there.
You know, and that's the thing about the conversation. I branded this show as the conversations that you never heard. And I'm sure that they never heard this type of conversation. I mean, from an ex-offender, a returning citizen, and then what did you do today? Like, you know, I met you through a mentoring program that you do, right? What did you do today? Like, tell them about that mentoring program.
I have this organization called Onward Reentry Services.
Onward Reentry Services?
Yep.
Cool.
Onward Reentry Services. I have a mentoring program I set up about 5.5 years ago, starting over here at SCI Chester. And we tried a few different things. Well, here's the deal. So I became a lawyer. I practiced for a long time. I was at the ACLU for almost 10 years. And then I got old. I'm actually pretty old. And, I mean, like Medicare old.
You don't look it.
Oh, thanks. Prison. Yeah. Anyway, so I'm I got retired, you know. And a friend of mine was running a thing called Pennsylvania Prison Society at the time. And they had massive financial problems and laid off 38 people one day. And we're very close to closing. So I went down and I talked to her, Ann, I forgot, whatever, Schwartzman.
Ann Schwartzman.
And I went down and said, Ann, sounds like you need a hand. I have time. And she's like, boy, do I. And so we started talking. And she's like, what would you have liked when you got out of prison? What would have helped you? And so I just started talking. And I said, what I'd have liked when I got out of prison is if there was another guy I could talk to who was a few years ahead of me, who'd gotten out of prison just a couple years before and was doing really well. Because I'd like to ask questions, you know?
Exactly.
Because every time I've done this in the past, I've tried to go from what I already know because I'm so smart, you know. And I kept ending up back in prison. So clearly I didn't have it all. So I needed somebody else.
Exactly.
So I said to Ann, what I need is somebody who got out and stayed and did well. And we talked about what that would look like. And she said, oh, this sounds great. Why don't you create that program? And we're going to start in about a month at SCI Chester. And I'm like, okay. So I started reading up and looking around and making an outline. And we talked to the superintendent over there, whose name I think was Farmer at the time.
I wasn't there then, I don't know.
Yeah. And
Came a little later.
he said, yeah, let's give it a shot. And so I would think I was the very first program in the Pennsylvania Department of Corrections Transitional Housing Units, period. And so we just started the program. And what the program is basically, I run through a bunch of stuff, information that I think people need to know. For example, that you really can do almost anything, even with a terrible felony record, except for things that are illegal for you to do. And that's very few things.
And who better than you to tell it?
Yeah,
Someone
well,
that has accomplished that.
Well, I never thought I could be a lawyer. Nobody thought that. But you can. And it turns out there's a few of us.
You know your opinion mean a lot to me, right?
No, I didn't know that.
I mean, your opinion mean a lot to me.
Okay.
You said something to me that a lot of people used to say to me, but when you said it to me, it brought like more credence to it.
Mm-hmm.
When we had the conversation in my office and you said you should run for an office, city council or something.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
I believe it.
And just for you feeling like that about me, man, really, I put a lot of thought into that.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to try that. We're going to try that. The first ex-offender running for city office.
Well, we have to do some legal research first.
Let's do it.
Okay.
Let's do it.
It'll take a couple hours. That's about it.
Mm-hmm.
No charge.
No charge. My God. See what I'm saying? Resources. Bring them together.
Well, you know, I'm retired. So anyway, yeah, if I can explain to people that they can do a lot of things. Mm-hmm. And then we talk about how to do it, how you need a plan. If you're going to do something different, you have to break habits. The only way to break a habit is if you have a plan to do something else instead of what you were doing that you don't want to do. So let's talk about what it is you want to do. And then let's figure out how to do it. Break it down into tiny little pieces. Nobody jumps out and becomes a lawyer or a doctor or anything out of the blue. They take every tiny little step. And there's almost nobody around here who couldn't do almost any of these things if they broke it down into the little tiny pieces. So we talk about that. Then, when you get close to getting released, I hook the guys up with a mentor. The mentor is now only guys who've been through my program and who've done well. So I try to pair them up with somebody that's kind of like them, that they would get along with. And they talk for a couple weeks before they get out, before the guy gets out, about what he's trying to do when he hits the street, to make a rational plan. No pie in the sky, no daydreams, but real facts. Can you really do this, and how? And then once they get out, they keep meeting and talking for as long as they think they need.
Okay.
And some guys it's 3-4 years, some guys it's a couple months, whatever it takes. And then after they got their feet on the ground and things going well, then I hit them up to be a mentor too. So the idea is,
like you're doing me, right?
That's right. We got paperwork today. He's filling out. So it turns out that our recidivism rate is dramatically lower than anybody else's.
Congratulations.
Yeah, and it
I'm
turns
a
out
product of that, you know.
there's one. And the only reason, I think, or the main reason, is because all the mentors are ex-cons who've done well. Who better to show you how not to go back to prison than somebody who's not going back to prison?
Exactly. Facts.
Yeah. You don't really need like somebody with a college degree in reentry studies or something. You just need a guy who's done a bunch of time, who got out, and who's doing okay.
Lived experience, a credible messenger.
Yeah. So that's pretty much the game. That's what I'm up to these days.
God.
What I do today, I don't know. I forget. Oh, I was at the library.
At the library, yeah. Listen to the kids sing, right?
Oh, they're great.
Tell them about that.
Okay, so I have a 20-month-old girl. I know this is exciting. It's not my child. I'm a foster parent.
That's honorable.
And I'm about to adopt her. We've had her since she was less than 30 days old. Parents in prison. And won't be out soon. So I I didn't have anything I had to do this morning, so after the gym, we went to the public library to the music class for little kids in the basement. There are about 50 tiny little kids, 4 years old and under, and random assortment of parents, and some crazy guy with a guitar and a lot of props, and it's hilarious. You really should go if you ever get a chance.
And that's the thing, man, that you instilled in me, to always find something to do. Find something to do to occupy your time, that free time. Like you was like, go look at some art.
Yep.
Go do things different, and that's something different. I just wanted you to paint that picture to him so I can throw that picture in there. That's something that you gave me, a jewel that you gave to me. Because now I do things I never thought I would do. Now I've been to the art in New York. You know what I mean? I've been to art museums. You know, looking at art and all that. I'm not even interested in that, but it's just to be a part of it, or say I've done something, and just give myself something to do different.
Right. You got to go out and do something in the world. If you want things to happen for you, you got to get out of the house. You got to get away from the TV. You got to get out of the neighborhood. You got to go places that you don't normally go. You know, It's a huge world. All the opportunities are outside of your house and your friend's house, you know? Get out there and do things. So you don't sit around and watch TV. You go volunteer somewhere. Volunteer at the community center, at the church, at the library, at the school. There's thousands of places. Just go out and do stuff. You meet people. Keeps you busy.
Networking.
And
Steve, man, I'd like to thank you, man, for coming out to the show. You know, inspiring, hoping to the people, and giving them a great story. You know, I would like to have you back, man, so we can continue this conversation.
Sure, anytime.
It was beautiful, man.
Anytime.
Thanks, though, Steve.
Nice to
you
see
want to
you.
say anything about, your program, anything?
Onward Reentry Services. If you're in prison, check us out.
Family in prison? Check them out.